Huh? Hi everyone. It is me, Sailor Moon, and it's me, Sailor Neptune or Sailor SeaWorld. And today we're going to talk about was the Cloverway Sailor Moon as the other two things that we're going to leave out that we didn't talk about in the first film. So another thing that a lot of folks tend to either bitch or rant or guilt or shame or scathe for the Deke Sailor Moon was how the unstraight folks were handled. And at first, following a Sailor Moon, there was only two folks who were truly unstraight: Kunsight and Zoisite, or Milikite and Zoisite. And the other offshoots of Sailor Moon, Zoisite was a man who was unstraight. And in the Deke world, Zoisite was a woman. And a lot of folks tend to scathe that, believing that the mindset in the stand should have been where it was now. Now, a long time ago, I don't know how long ago, but we're going to say at least from the between 80s to like the early 2000 YLs, if you were doing a show or a film or a play and there were anyone who was unstraight in it and you were doing that play, show, or film for children, then you couldn't do that. And that also included drawing shows and drawing films too. Now nowadays, nowadays the mindset and the stand and the understanding and the trusting and the learning is not where it was then. Nowadays, if you don't have anyone who is unstraight in your show, films, or plays, you tend to get scathed for it. But back then, it was the other way around. Now, how did Deke, deal with this? Well, Deke made Zoisite a woman, which at the end of the day was not a big deal. But some folks did make a big deal out of it. I don't know how some folks in the unstraight followership felt about it, or how some folks in the straight followership felt about it. But you see, Deke did not want to be didn't want to be in a bind where folks would get angry enough and say, I just watched a drawing show where someone was unstraight. And if they wanted to go way above telling their children not to watch it, they might choose to go above that, and they might choose to get a hold of the folk work. And at that time, it could have been either WB, UPN, Fox, need be's, and USA, even Cartoon, and tell them, and YTV, and tell them that, oh no, I just watched a drawing show with someone who was unstraight in it, and I want you to do something about it. And if enough folks bitched and ranted, then, UPN, WB, Fox, USA, and Cartoon, and YTV would say, I'm sorry, it's a no-go. So Deke didn't want to be in that bind. Now, by the time Cloverway got the rights to work with Sailor Moon, I guess we'll say 2000 YL to 2003 YL, wasn't as long as the Deke deal went. Cloverway, a lot of folks tend to make a big deal about some of the ways that Cloverway went by handling Sailor Moon. Cloverway wanted to keep Sailor Moon more near to the Toei work than Deke did. How they do this? Well, having the ending song be whatever song that Toei had for their ending song. And by that time, Cloverway didn't have to have the Sailor Says thing, so that was no longer needed. But Cloverway still had to follow some oversights, and that included how you dealt with anyone who was unstraight. So Cloverway had to deal with two folks who were unstraight. You want to go on now? Yeah, Sailor Moon, you're right. Me and Sarah Yorn and Sailor Skyworld were unstraight. So Cloverway had to make us near kin. And a lot of folks bitched and ranted and felt that was, that should have not been done, that they should have not done it, that everyone knew what we were. And yes, and the rest of all the other offshoots of Sailor Moon, we were unstraight lovers. But in the Cloverway world, we were near kin. And a lot of folks felt that was a big deal. They made a big deal out of it. Another thing they made a big deal out of was strike names being shifted again. Yes, Deke wasn't the only one that shifted out strike names. So did Cloverway. Cloverway had to shift out the strike names again because now they were going by the Dawnish or the Dawnish strike names that Toei went with, and Cloverway had to offshoot those names in. Another thing they also bitched once again about were names being shifted again. It pissed them off that the Dawnish names were borrowed out, and once again they had Latinus, Frenchus, Hellenish, Spanish, or Hebrewish, or Farsius, borrowed names instead of the Dawnish borrowed names. Once again, very few names from Dawnish was borrowed into English. A lot more of the Frenchus and Latinus and Farsius and Hebrewish and Spanish and Hellenish borrowed names. More of those names were borrowed into English than the Dawnish names were. So they made a big deal about that. Why? Who knows? Another thing they made a big deal about, was it was in English. First off, you might think that it was a big deal. Why they make a big deal about it being put in English when most folks who live in the 4-1 Reichs and the settled land and the southern land in New Zealand and also in the 4-1 Kingdom and other English-speaking lands, English tends to be the first speech. And yes, that includes Ireland and Highlands too. Now, anyway, and some other lands, and the East, and and some lands and black lands speak English too. So yeah, why it pissed them off that it was in English, or pissed them off that it didn't match up to what was being said in the Toei one, is beyond me. Yeah, they did have to skim and clean some things out if they felt that some things that were being said wouldn't be right for kids or betweeners. Then they had to shift out what was being said. And something else they also bitched about, stead names once again. But this time the stead names were shifted to their Dawnish names and not to whatever borrowed names that Deke had them during their time. But yeah, they bitched about that. They also, by the time the fourth following came along, they bitched about, Fisheye being unstraight, which a lot of folks say in all the offshoots of Sailor Moon, Fisheye is unstraight. Well, in a Cloverway's world, Fisheye was a woman, and that pissed them off. Once again, just like dealing with Uranus, Sailor Sky World, and myself, Fisheye had to also be dealt with because, once again, Cloverway would have been in the bind if a lot of folks bitched that cartoon, so they'd say it's a no-go. Back to you, Sailor Moon. Yeah, at the end of the day, Sailor Neptune or Sailor SeaWorld or Michelle, they make a big deal about some of the shifts that Deke and Cloverway made to Sailor Moon from between 95 YL to 20 YL. Now, if you think that they make a big deal about Cloverway and what Cloverway did to Sailor Moon, they also make a big deal about Pioneer or what Pathseeker did to Sailor Moon too. Now, Pioneer, before I end this film, kept everything more near to the Deke work than Cloverway did. So anyway, if you like this film, then follow us over here at Sailor Moon for Life. Don't forget to follow and playlist and share this film. Give your feedback on it. Don't forget to hit the bell and the ringer to let you know when the next upload, live stream, or short's been done. I, Sailor Moon Serena, I, Sailor Neptune or Sailor SeaWorld Michelle, and we'll see you later. Goodbye. Farewell. So long.